So welcome back. I hope you had enough time to have a short break. We are excited to be at the end of the conference, ready to go one more time. Thank you for joining us to this live session that we want to talk about labor issues, which they are very important and more important than ever in this age of COVID. Just a couple of things I want to mention. Even when we go through difficulties, we show that as an industry we can come together. And one of the numbers I want to share is actually the number of meals that, thank you to the donations of BI as part of the welcome reception, and many of you here at the Living Conference are going to make possible. The numbers are closer to over 18,000 meals. Thank you to the donations that and the funds that they were donated throughout the Lehman Conference, which is a great, fantastic number. Keep doing that. If you get a chance, the link go in the more section on the left-hand side of the screen and do that. Don't do it during the live streaming, just because otherwise they will kick you out of the video, and then we have to come back. So do it at the end. So we really appreciate that. Those efforts. And then at the end of the conference, you will see as well that there are some information on surveys. Tell us what you like, what you didn't like about the event, and then give us feedback, and we'll send those after the meeting. So after this couple of housekeeping things, I want to get started with this last session that has to do with labor issues, and some of the things that surface just because of COVID. Maybe they were accentuated. And to talk about some of these issues, we have invited the first speaker, Ted Matthews. Ted Matthews is a mental health practitioner with over 30 years of experience in counseling in rural areas. Ted, it's very good to see you again. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Good morning. And his focus has been for the past 2 decades has been on farmer mental health support. And I know he's been involved with many of the discussions with producers, with the people at the farm, with even leadership. At many companies, helping to come up with better strategies to help address some of those stresses as a result of the situation that we're living. So Ted will cover. We'll talk about communication, okay? And then this is an opportunity. This session is to be more interactive or very interactive. So please send your questions in the chat as we go. I will try to ask those, but Ted first will give us an overview, and then very quickly we'll move to get some questions. So with that, Ted, thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Communication with farms and farmers. A lot of people don't realize that veterinarians are a therapist, a friend, a confidant, someone they can trust, so they will ask questions that have nothing to do with what you're there for. And I've had some vets say, sometimes I really have a hard time getting away from there, and I have a lot of other things to do. So how can I do that? I always suggest that, you tell whoever you're working with, first of all, let's get done what it is that I came here to do. And then when I'm done with that, then we can talk about those other things. The chances are really good that by the time you get done with your work, they won't need to talk about that anymore, because that's just kind of how people are. So that's just kind of a helpful thing. Next, I'd just like to say that in case you can't tell, I'm having a hard time finding a barber that will trim my beard. But my head seems to still be just fine as far as the amount of hair that grows on it. When communication breaks down, we have so many issues with husbands and wives now, because women work off the farm. And when they work off the farm, they have their own issues off the farm, and their ability to communicate with their spouses is difficult. In general, men tend to pull back the higher stress levels. The higher the stress level, the more they pull back. And for women, it's absolutely the opposite. The higher the stress level, the more they want to talk. Why that can become so significant is if they start off with those two thoughts, then they're actually in an argument before they say the first word, because he's thinking, why does she keep bugging me about this? And she's thinking, why won't he talk to me? So before they even start the conversation, they're already having a difficult time getting through it. So it's important that they understand the difference there, and that they can talk through those things, knowing that those differences are there. Secondly, when it comes to that type of communication, when you work off the farm, you have your own personal issues and so on, and the farm is the farm is the farm is the farm. When I first started working with farmers in the early 90s, the divorce rate was far lower than it is now on the farm, and I attribute a lot of that to women working off the farm. Not that it's their fault, but women working off the farm because they have issues of their own there. They oftentimes don't like the job that they have, and they're doing it to pay down the debt or to pay for their insurance. And because of that, they come home and they have their own issues, and the farmer wants to talk about the farm. So that can create a lot of rifts, because we need to listen to the other people on the farm and understand the sacrifices that they're making, and be aware of the difficulty that they have. Something else that I see on the farm all the time is that parents send their kids to school to be better educated in farming. And they come home and they're agronomists and they're lots of other different things, and they have a true understanding of things on the farm, deeper and more so than their parents. And they want to change things, and they want it to be bigger, and they want it to be more, and they want it to expand to X, Y, Z point. And dad wants it to leave it be the same. Well, that is a natural thing, and people need to understand that that's a natural thing. Dads don't want to risk what they have, so they want status quo. They want to leave it where it is. Sons or daughters who are taking over the farm at some point want to expand, want more. That's natural also. I tell people all the time, what would you rather do? Would you rather have your son or daughter say, nah, doesn't matter, whatever you want to do is fine with me, and we'll just go that way? Or would you want them to have that kind of energy? So when husbands and wives talk to their children about passing on the farm and how that farm is going to look in the future, they need to respect each other. And that's the most important part. If you don't respect the other person, then you're not going to get anything out of it. So oftentimes people get confused with respecting someone with trust and honesty. And if you don't agree, then the rules are different. And that's absolutely not true. I respect a lot of people that I disagree with on many, many different levels, but I respect the fact that they have a right to that thought, and I can accept the fact that their thoughts are just as valid as mine, just different. So that becomes a pretty important thing when they're communicating with each other. Now, something that people talk to me about all the time is suicides. And suicides on the farm, as you all know, is a major thing, and we have lots of them. Excuse me. And it's even higher than the statistics show, because some farm accidents are from people thinking that they're better off financially dead than alive. And so And the reason I know that is because if they're not successful, they'll admit that sometimes to me and say they attempted suicide because they felt that the world would be better off without them. And the problem, of course, with that is farmers tend to be isolated. And if they're isolated, who do they talk to about those things? And as I said, men tend to, when they feel more stress, they tend to pull back more and more. And so if they're pulling back and they're under all of that stress, the reason they don't reach out for help is that concept of I can handle it, I'm not crazy. And somewhere along the line, people decided that psychologists, therapists, the only way that you'd want to talk to them is if you were at that point where you were crazy. And that's just not fair. It's not fair because in focusing with that, we have, I don't know how to put this the best way. Well, I'll come back to that. With issues between moms and husbands, when I look at the biggest issues that I have, it's women doing the books and having opinions on things like, should we buy a new tractor? Should we get a used one? Should we wait till next year? All of those things, all of those opinions didn't exist in the past. Men made all of those decisions, and now men and women are making them together, and that's new for a lot of farmers. So it's difficult to communicate those things. When it comes to communication, I think the most important thing is your ability to listen. A lot of people assume that when you're talking to them, they want answers from you. They want you to fix them. I want you to think about yourself when you think about that. And when you're talking about your stresses, how you're feeling, what's going on with you, do you want somebody to fix you, or do you want somebody to hear you? We need to be heard, and that means we need to be able to talk all the way through whatever it is that we're feeling, because if we don't, we just simply lose track. We don't follow what's going on, and we interject things that upsets the other person oftentimes, and we have to be really careful with that. So that becomes really important.
So very good, Ted. I mean, you're bringing up communication and the differences in this case in gender. But what I noticed in my personal experience, and I had my dad was very introvert and fit many of the things that you're describing. But how do you help a person when you are in your own world, close? I mean, so much into your thoughts. How do you help that person to come out of it and help them talk about it and help them, to express? Because what I think happens too is there is so much stigma about some of these things that people just don't even want to talk about it. You tend to go back and pull back even more and more and more. So what's a good way to start a conversation that first they don't take it personal, that respect is there? Give us some pointers.
Okay. Well, first of all, when people are pulling back, it's because they're afraid that they'll be identified as being weak and all of those kinds of things. And that's usually men. And by the way, most suicides on the farm are male, in fact, huge percentage. And what I do is, for one, I take away that stigma of they're talking to a psychologist, and I say, and I tell people to, when they refer them to me, to just call me Ted. Ted knows more about this than I do, so let's talk to him. And secondly, I always try to remind people that it's mental health, not mental illness. So why wouldn't everyone want to be healthier? If you're depressed, why wouldn't you want to be less depressed? You don't have to look at being fixed or there being something really wrong with you to say, you can be healthier, you can be happier. So why wouldn't you want to do that? And I stress that all the time. And I also want to make sure that they understand that no one knows how much they can handle. No one. The way we find that out is when it's too late, when it's gone too far. And so if I feel like it's gone too far, then what am I going to do? I don't know. But if I slow it down, if I change it, if I move it into another direction, that the chances are far better that I'll be healthier. When I look at farm suicides as an example, oftentimes what I hear is they really believe they're better off dead. And they look at the finance of it, they look at insurance, they look at stress and anxiety and all of those things. And they just believe that they're better off that way. And who's going to tell them differently, So what I always suggest that people do is look to see what's going on with them. What do they feel? Are they changing in behavior? And if they are, what do we need to do? Now, everybody doesn't need to be a psychologist, but clergy can be involved. If as an example, somebody hasn't gone to church for 3 weeks and they never miss church, that's a major behavior change for them. So talk to the clergy that if you're in that church and say, I'm worried about Bob. He hasn't gone to church in 3 weeks, and that's just not like him. And I know he's farming, and I know that's really stressful. Can you give him a call? And that becomes a help. Remember that nobody knows how many people are prevented from committing suicide. We just know the people who commit suicide. If we help to move somebody a little bit off of where they're at, that may save their life, but they're not going to know that. You're not going to know that. So it isn't a matter of how can we figure out these numbers, which is what people seem to really love to do, is identify numbers. The only way I can see that this would be helpful is if the numbers, the percentage goes down, but never to figure out the why of that, because we don't know how far a person is going to go. So lowering that stress level. And something else, we tend to look at people and say, well, you're stressed, you're anxious, you're depressed. These are the things that you need to look at. These are the things you can do. Remember, if it was that simple, why are there 100,000 books written on anxiety and depression and stress? So it's not that simple. We're all different, and we all need to look at it differently, and we all need to focus in different ways.
So we live in stressful times, as you know, and we have this added stress of COVID on top of it. Did you get more phone calls as a result of the situation of COVID?
Yes. And one of the big things that I had to deal with recently was when they were euthanizing pigs and what that was doing to people who, what I would hear from them every time would be, they're healthy. There's nothing wrong with them. I can't put them anywhere. I have to kill them. I have to euthanize them. And that amount of stress is incredible. And by the way, I'm quite concerned about PTSD in the future for a lot of those farmers that have had to do that. So their stress levels skyrocketed for a lot of reasons. One being, they're not talking about something that they can put their hands on. They look at that pig and that pig is healthy. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And that's frustrating. And it's also financially, it was a big burden for tons of hog producers also. So that created a lot of stress for them, which creates a lot of stress for the family. Mm-hmm. And the family dynamics changed also. Lots more arguments, lots more, a lot of difficult conversations that were going on because, again, I'm shocking everyone here by saying that men and women don't think alike. So how they process is different, and therefore what they come up with is going to be different too, and how they want to go forward is going to be different.
So you mentioned PTSD. I mean, one of the concerns you have, and I'm thinking going forward, how can we identify some of this of the symptoms associated with it, and then how we can help? Because I feel like it's an incubator right now. People go through the situation, they try to resolve the situation, and then move on. But what you are referring to is that the effect of the situation might not show up until weeks or months later, when maybe down the road, 6 months down the road. So give us a few suggestions or thoughts about how do we identify those clinical signs or those symptoms that should be a red flag, and then how do we go about helping in those scenarios?
Okay. Well, first of all, remember that PTSD doesn't get diagnosed for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And so we aren't even close to that 6 months yet. So that's one thing to remember. And what you need to look for is a major change in personality, going to anger much sooner than they would in the past, looking at their outlook in life as being far more negative than it was. Showing that sense of helplessness and hopelessness. Why bother? Who cares? All of those kinds of things. And PTSD is a nasty thing. And if people are experiencing it, the best thing they can do is, as they start seeing those symptoms, take care of them as fast as they can, because it's like digging a well. The sooner you attack it, the better off you are. And if you don't, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. It won't take care of itself. And unfortunately, a lot of people fear or think that if they try to do the right thing, if they try to say the right thing, whatever, that it will all go away. And that's just not how PTSD works. So.
And for PTSD, again, I know very little about it. Do you actually have to look for professional help when you suspect it? Or again, is it enough with just having a few conversations with your family members?
Well, usually if you have PTSD, you're going to need clinical help to get you back on the road for a few reasons. One, you may need prescription meds for a while, and I want to talk about that a little bit too, but you may need prescription meds for a while, and in order to get those, you have to be diagnosed and so on. Prescription meds, one of the things that oftentimes bothers me is in rural areas, in farm areas, psychiatrists are few and far between. They just aren't around. And because of that, they will set up shop in a clinic once a week or once a month and come in, and they will see patients every 10 minutes or less. And the focus is on the meds. If they ask you if you're too tired or if you are tired, what they're saying is the med making you tired or whatever. And same thing with when they ask you if your anxiety is higher, they're simply looking at what do you want to do with meds. They are not dealing with the problem. And so if you see a psychiatrist where all they do is monitor your meds, and I shouldn't say all, that not being important, but if that's what they do, then you'll be on meds forever. Mm-hmm. And so you really need to see a therapist along with that. Mm-hmm. So your goal needs to be, I'll be on meds for 6 months or maybe at max a year, and move on from there, and not assume that once you're taking meds, everything will be okay, because that's absolutely not true.
No, very good point. So the issue of mental health, obviously COVID, before the suicide rates, that just being aware of those, it seems like there is more consciousness, at least in companies, or at least people talk more about it. Do you see more resources being deployed into those companies to help address those situations, either at the production company or even in the veterinarians? Are we doing enough?
Well, I always sort of feel sorry for veterinarians, because of their, they go there to do something with that farm's animals. That's what they're there for. But oftentimes they're the only person that they see. So when they get there, they become their nurse, their doctor, their psychologist, all of those things. And I always strongly suggest that they focus on getting done what they need to get done. And I have a hard time with a lot of the process that people go through that work with farmers, because they can actually be afraid to go see a farmer. Because if I go see Bob, he's gonna want me there for 3 hours, so then they don't want to see Bob. And I think that it's really important that we focus on, if Bob is having those issues, get him some help, and it can be in a multitude of different directions. Clergy, social services, lots of different areas. But when it comes to the things that we have with hotlines and so on, that's helping. But a lot of people don't know what hotlines do. They almost everybody knows what they are, but they don't know what they do. They don't know what their advice is. I suggest to everyone that's listening here, should call up their hotline and say, okay, what do you do when somebody calls in and they say they're really stressed or they're suicidal or whatever it is? What do you do? How do you help them? So when they answer that question and you see somebody that's in that situation, you will know what they do, rather than not know, so you don't do anything. The biggest problem that I see with people is when they don't know what to do, they do nothing. Mm-hmm. So just have an idea of being able to do something.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. And I always wonder what they say or how they help you, but I think it's a very good point. And in some way, what you're saying too, it's try to be proactive, right? Try to anticipate those situations, or building. I was thinking too, how do you build those relationships with the people are in a good place, right? When they are not in that hole, because I think it's easier then to help them come out, pull them back from that situation. If you have built that relationship before, it's more likely perhaps they will talk with you.
So, yeah, and trust is a huge, and farms more than anywhere, trust is a huge issue.
Yeah. No, good point. We're getting closer to the end. I think this half an hour is going just way too fast for me. Any departing thoughts? Anything you want to tell our producers, our veterinarians that are listening to you?
Take care of yourself first. We have this concept that's a selfish statement. As soon as somebody hears that, they think, what about, and then somebody else. If I take care of myself, I have the ability to take care of other people. If I don't take care of myself, I don't have the ability to take care of other people. So it starts with you. Be nice to yourself, take care of yourself, focus on what you can do to be a happier person, and you will be much better with all the people that you work with.
That's a very good point. And is taking care of yourself also reflecting about the things that you can be grateful about? Because I think sometimes I find it hard sometimes because of that thing. You feel you are selfish, right? If you first put yourself front. But if you can dissociate that and maybe thinking about what you can be grateful for, is that another way of taking care of yourself?
Absolutely. One of the things that I hear from people all the time, if I ask 100 farmers what's the most important thing in their life, they will say family. Mm-hmm. And then when I say, well, what have you done for your family in the last week? That's usually a pause and they haven't thought about it. So remember, if that's the most important thing in your life, prove it. Make your family more important to you, not through that thought, but in reality. Show them that they're the most important thing. It doesn't take tons of time to be able to do that. But when we bond as a family and we're healthier as a family, mental health issues become far less.
That's a very good point. If I was to ask that question to my children, they would answer, just take me to buy more ice cream. That will make us very, very grateful for all what you do, Mom.
But my wife would say to a store and let me shop for whatever outfits she...
Oh, outfits. Yeah, that's a good one too. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time, your expertise. We really appreciate it on behalf of the farmers in Minnesota. And I think you will receive phone calls from everywhere in the US. Please keep that phone number up. Keep answering those phone calls. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
You take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So we will move on the program and we will move to the next presenter again. We got a bit of sense with Ted already about what was happening during the COVID days and the phone calls he was getting. So the next speaker, we have invited her to talk about from the human resources point of view, from a company perspective, what sort of issues they were facing during COVID, what are they doing, what sort of policies they've put in place, how are they getting ready for the fall in some way, okay? So, which is not an easy topic, but it's a very, very important topic. And to do that, we have with us Nicole Paulson, who is the Senior Director of Human Resources at the Pipestone system. Nicole is a graduate from South Dakota State University and has been providing HR services to the Pipestone system and Pipestone Veterinary Services for over 14 years, if I understand correctly, Nicole, so a long time. And I know she was getting a lot of phone calls, and she's probably getting those phone calls during the COVID days. Maybe you can tell us more about how you manage all that chaos from your desk when all that was happening. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Yes, so the days of HR are a little different today than what they probably were 6 months ago, for those of you that have any sense of what's going on. And so I kind of want to share with you guys a little bit of kind of just walking you back through the steps of what we went through here at Pipestone and how we tried to take care of our employees, as well as, some of our just our friends, right? Our friends, our family, and give guidance to those. So I'm going to show a slideshow here, if I got all my technology right. And as Montse said, so I am a native to Pipestone. I've been with the Pipestone system for 15 years. In my first 4 years or 5 years here, I did a lot of different things, from data entry to guild sales. I was more on the production side of things. And also in high school, I actually worked at a farm. I've been in HR now 10 years. And so the fun part about what I do is, as I still get to know a lot about production, and yet I get to be in HR and work with people. And so it's kind of been a challenge, but yet a rewarding experience to try to make all ends meet. So when we first started COVID, COVID hit the US really bad for us, I would say, in mid-March. In February, I actually took a trip to India with Dr. Sprague. And when we first arrived, we seen all the signs of wearing face masks and things like that. And that was all new to me at that time. And I was thinking, oh gosh, what if it does get to the US? And what are we gonna have to do? What things are we gonna have to change? And how is it truly going to affect us from India to the US, right? Like, it doesn't always equate. And so when I returned, everything seemed fine, but shortly after I got back is when things started to happen. And so as a team, between myself and others here at Pipestone, we started to sit down weekly and just saying, hey, like, what does a pandemic mean to me? What does it mean to my family? What does it mean to my staff? And as an employer, what am I legally required to even do? Like, it's different. It's something we've never been through before. And so we definitely all had to learn together as we went through this. And then this whole term essential came up. Like, what does essential mean? Do I come to work? Do I stay at home? Can I drive to work? Can I drive to the store? Nobody really knew. And the one thing that we all learned through this is that clarifying, or even as Ted talked a lot about, it's communication, right? So communicating to your employees, or trying to define clarity for them on what to expect and what they should do, is huge. And so we continued to try to send out different types of memos or emails or things to our newsletter that just said, hey, here's today's latest update. And as you all know, in March, it kind of felt like there was updates every other week or every other day, or just they were constant. And so one thing that we focused on is identifying essential. And as people that are working with swine, we know that food, water, and air are three of our most critical things. And so if you have to do one of those three things, that means you're essential, and that means you can go to work. So fast forward 6 months today, I feel like I see the word I'm essential and on t-shirts and hats and coffee mugs and stickers on cars now. So it's not just some word that was used historically. It's got a whole new sense of meaning today. Through the driving, there's people who had concerns about driving to work and if they were going to get pulled over, all of those things. And again, so we sent out a memo to them that they could carry in their cars that would give them, basically said that they were deemed essential and that they had to drive to and from work. And this was the employer that where they worked from. So those, I think, maybe helped calm the storm. But again, through these first initial 6-7 weeks of this, it was all about communicating, over communicating, and just calming their nerves in order to provide them some sense of what a new normal was. So as we as a team sat down together, we established that there was two main goals that we had to focus on, one of which was to maintain our staffing ratios. We didn't want our farms to be short-staffed, or any of our locations for that matter. And we also wanted to make sure that we provided a safe work environment to our employees. So through these things, we knew that not having enough staff was going to be critical, and we knew that we'd want our staff to make sure that they felt safe coming to work. And so we need to review the things that we had to do to do that. So we changed some things. We changed a lot of things. And everybody that's listening today, or all of your employees, have probably changed some things in the last 6 months to help create their new norm, whether it be at work, at home. We began to make some small changes in our day-to-day task to help minimize the risk. We started to limit travel, limit meeting size. Food, we didn't have any gatherings of food, whether potlucks or things like that on the office or in the farm. We then also had some of our employees that could work from home. Now this obviously isn't sow farm employees, but some of our office people, our support staff, if they were able to work from home, we did encourage them that opportunity to do that. That being said, there was also some of us employees that remained at work every day. We never worked from home. My team rotated schedules, payroll rotated schedules, really everybody rotated or worked from home for a period of time. Now we had multiple different states that we were working on. We have 1,300 employees and we cover 8 different states. And so there was a lot of research pretty routinely to figure out what states' requirements were what, and what the timeframes were on them, and what the actual requirement meant to an essential employee. A lot of the media would generalize things that were covered to be very basic and to be based off of the employer that is under 500 people and based in what state. And so the bigger organization that you are and the more states that you cover, the more research you had to do pretty routinely. And when the CDC becomes your favorite website, when you open up your browser history, I don't know if that's a good thing, but it was slightly depressing to me for a while. So the next thing we did after we changed some small things is we created what's considered a human biosecurity employee traffic plan. So everybody who has any idea what biosecurity is and as a swine vet knows that you go to barns from the top of the food chain down. And so we kind of mirrored that same concept and put it in place for all of our employees and what was required if they were going to go into a farm. Now, this obviously changed, has changed more recently as we've begun to modify our restrictions. So this was just the one snip that I had here that I added. It talks about things that the employee has to do between if they're down and overnight, or if they did travel somewhere, what they have to do before they come back. And we use this not as our Bible, but I would say more as our guide. And they, with us crossing state lines as much as we do with all of our employees, it was just a good reference point. But at the end of the day, when I look back, I'm pretty glad that we took time to do it, because it was definitely helpful to have a reference point or to have something to communicate to staff and consistency to communicate to staff. The more we've gone through this, it's all about what you communicate to your employees and staying consistent with your message, knowing that things will be modified. But it was definitely a helpful tool as we worked through the COVID pandemic. Sanitation protocols. I'm sure you guys have all gone through this, and I will be the first one to admit that when we had to beef up our sanitation protocols, I kind of said, I know that the cleaning ladies come, but I don't necessarily know how often. I mean, I think I know one of their names, but I really don't know what their requirements are, what they use, the products that they use, or anything. And so that was huge for us, right? Identifying who and what they were. And then the one thing that we learned through this too is like to sit down and ask them, are you okay to clean during COVID? And to our surprise, our cleaning staff was not. So we actually had to hire in additional cleaning staff that was willing to, one, expose herself by coming into our office buildings. And then, 3, by cleaning more frequently than what we had in the past. And then also just reviewing the products that they're using to make sure that they were according to CDC guidelines, to make sure that they met those expectations. And then we also had to send them to our farms. And so that when we put a farm on a health hold, that those barn managers could either themselves or direct somebody else to sanitize the office areas or any common shared spaces, so to speak. And so that was new for us and is still new today. And we again have modified some of these as we've progressed further into this, but it still definitely has not gone away. Temping before you enter into all work locations and asking the questionnaire. All of you have probably walked into somewhere and had some type of questionnaire or asked to be temped. And just when we all thought there was a short of toilet paper, we realized that there was short of thermometers. And so it took us a little while to get temping put into place, because thermometers were, selling for hundreds and hundreds of dollars on Amazon, and nobody could get their hands on them. So now we are all temping at all of our locations and sending people home if they do have a fever. And then they do have a questionnaire that we ask at all of our locations to try to help. Again, this is probably something that's just going to be part of our new normal here into the coming months, even potentially after COVID. And then we dealt with FFRCA. And again, my comment before, we had to, the hardest part about being in HR was keeping up with the policy changes that were coming out by your state and government, and then knowing what did or didn't affect you as the employer based off of the criteria that was met. And so FFRCA was the Families First Response Act. And this was for employers that were smaller than 500 employees. If you were smaller than 500 employees, you were not covered by the FFRCA. So therefore, you basically kind of had to figure stuff out or make your own policies to try to help through this. And so just to review, the employers that were under 500 basically had to give their staff 80 hours of PTO if they were affected by COVID. We here rolled out our own additional PTO policy for those that were directly affected by COVID, and they just had to meet, I think we had 4 criteria on it that we have to meet, and we continue to offer that to our employees. And so FFRCA was a big thing that came out. There's a lot of reading onto it. I just kind of wanted to summarize so you guys understand, who it affected and who it didn't affect. This was another one that was huge to employees because they would watch the news, and the news would tell them that your employer has to offer you the 80 hours of PTO. And so if they thought they came in contact with somebody that was sick with COVID, they just thought they should get that time off. And you have to continuously ask more questions and clarify with the employees. And that became very draining to our site managers, as well as to myself and my team, because they didn't necessarily understand. So we were constantly educating the difference between who is eligible for FFRCA and who isn't, as well as just because you think you came into contact with somebody doesn't mean you need 2 weeks off of work, okay? All right, so through this, I kind of looked back over what we have done here at Pipestone. We have a staffing ratio that we have come up with, and we send out a staffing sheet every Thursday to our production people. And our target ratio, we want to be at 100%, which essentially is we have a staffing matrix that we have that says you should have 15 people on your farm. That's your target, and we try to have you at 15 people all the time. And so every week we update that. And so for the last 16 weeks, we're actually above our target at 102%, which has been phenomenal. And I'll tell you how we did that here in the next slide. The other part that I found was interesting is that when I looked back, and I just kind of thought of this morning actually, at how many people we hired in May, June, and July. I'm not sure what my HR staff did for 3 months because they only hired 5 full-timers. But I also looked that we did transfer 100 employees through those 3 months to try to maintain our staffing ratio. So you can definitely see that things changed even in the world of HR for my own staff during that time. From a barn level, how did we do those things? Oh, sorry, I got the wrong slide in the right order. We did a lot of different things. The first thing was to focus on your staff, on the staff that you have, right? How are they doing? Ask questions, make them feel good about being there and make them know that you care. That's been huge. And just talk to them. So open communication. Tell them what's going on. The entry-level employee probably doesn't understand what you as a veterinarian do or what you as an owner do or whatever your role may be. They may not think like you, and it's important that you sit there and explain to them, why are we euthanizing these pigs? Why are they euthanizing those market hogs? They don't necessarily understand those things, but having a smaller conversation with them to help be able to have them take something back to their families was incredibly helpful for us and in our barns for those employees to talk about. We also created labor efficiencies. Our production team reviewed and reviewed and reviewed things that we could maybe not have to do for this week and do them next week, or maybe we just didn't have to do them at all. And so through that, we were actually able to save labor and reduce some of our targets. They also changed some of their production protocols on what was really saving a pig or what was maybe just what made it easier. Like they reviewed all of those and made minor adjustments, nothing huge, but they did make some adjustments. Some fun things that we did try to somehow have food. We did some box lunch things. We did some independently wrapped things that could still bring light to a few days throughout the summer to help some of our people enjoy. The other one that we did, which was kind of fun, and we did this at the beginning of COVID, we did themed dress-up days, similar to like when, your kids are in like 2nd and 3rd grade and every day is a different day. We did the same thing, and our staff had a lot of fun with those. They had to send in their picture from working from home. This is when we were, at home working. And then we made collages of all the pictures, and then our farm employees actually had to vote. For every day was a different topic. So we had 5 days, and then the farm employees got to vote on who was their favorite. And the winner of each day, we gave gift certificates to local food vendors or restaurants in our areas. Okay. All right, I'm going to jump back this one. So in summary, one of the things that I think comes up a lot is, so truly, how bad has COVID affected you? How many of your locations have COVID? And I just updated this morning, and we have had 23 of our locations have 1 or more positive tests from COVID. And 55 of our locations at some point have been put on a potential hold because of a positive. What exactly that means is that when our employees feel that they have been exposed or they're ill, they're going to get a test, we put that farm on hold. And what that means is that nobody can come into that farm now until we get those test results back. So I track those on a daily basis to see who's negative, who's positive, who's had some contact with a family member, or just where we are. So of that, you can see that we've had 156 people that have come back with a negative test, and we've had 47 that have come back positive. And so not a huge number for the size of employees that we have, but we definitely track it routinely to try to encourage, again, those safe work environment for our farms. So a little bit when we talk to our employees, and I made this comment earlier that your employees just really like to know what's going on. And so I found a Google Trends search that you could do, and I looked up to see how many people were actually Googling unemployment versus sports right now, because with sports, it's been kind of in the news quite a bit with whether, they're going to play or they're not going to play, or if you're going to go or not going to go, and now the Big Ten's finally going to play. And so the red line is actually unemployment, and the blue line is sports. So this kind of shows you where your employee's mindset is, I feel. And the graph all the way over to the right, I apologize, I should have added another date on there. That was as of Sunday. So it's still pretty close to each other, but just to put into perspective what your employees might be thinking about and what they may or may not want to ask questions about as you see them. And so how did we get through this, right? What are we doing? How are we maintaining our staffing ratios? What's keeping our heads above water? And I think to summarize in one word, it's really reassurance. Everybody wants to know, and probably on more levels than one, that they have a job. And so just honesty with them. Paint the picture of reality of saying, yeah, the market wasn't good, it's getting better, but here's our plan. This is what we're going to do to try to sustain. We may have had, things happen with euthanizing pigs or whatnot, but these are the reasons why. Just be honest with them and tell them that. They will understand if you sit down and have that conversation with them. Benefits. We made so many amendments, to our benefits plan because of the COVID-19 coverage. And I think just communicating with those to the employees is huge. And so we will talk, or Ted actually talked a little bit about mental health too. And one of the things that we tried to point out to our employees is that they could get help for that with telemedicine and with some of these virtual visits, and to know that it's okay to talk about it and that our insurance covers it. Just telling them that, not actually having the conversation of, hey, like, I think you have something wrong with you, right? We're not doing that, but we're exposing to them to what benefit coverage they have for that. Okay, so I won't talk about my next slide a lot with mental stress or mental health, because Ted did that really. I just wanted to point out that you need to recognize that your employees probably are struggling. Just being there and caring for them and showing them where or how to get help is huge. And know that there is also some good stress in life, but you definitely don't want people towards the top of this pyramid. All right, and then kind of winding up here, and hopefully you guys have some questions here, but more recently, one of the high school students came to me and wanted to interview me about what was my number one priority to being a leader. And my kind of immediate response was to ensuring that my team and I are providing the best service to our customers and employees. And I always tell my team that we in HR are definitely a service. When we Pipestone are a management company and we manage sow farms, and we provide an HR service to the employees and to our customers. The sow farms are our customers. And I think it's just so important to remember that in HR, you're just about communicating the challenges and being real with people and letting people that that they care about you, and being honest with them is definitely probably going to help you keep them as your employees in the long term. And then lastly, in summary, I think 1,200 emails, 100 memos, and 300 opinion changes. I'm really ready for the pandemic to be over, but I definitely look forward to the next challenge that's coming. Questions?
Very good, Nicole. A lot of changes. I could see how your phone was ringing all the time and trying to adapt those policies just based on what was happening. So you've done a lot of things, obviously. You are in the middle of many things, and the situation is very fluid. So how are you preparing yourself for the fall? Are you reverting back some of the policies, or are they staying? Can you walk us through how you prepare?
Yep. So coming into the fall, a lot of our human health hold is what we call it, our checklist, our human health hold list. If we still have barns that are coming up with a positive employee, they're still put on hold, or a potential positive, those locations are still put on hold, which essentially shuts off all visitors into that location without extreme approval. As an example, today we had an issue where we had a feed line out and we needed to get somebody in there. So that would be an extreme measure to me. But beyond that, that farm stays on hold. Nobody's allowed in or out of there until we get that test result back. And we'll maintain that going into the fall. A lot of our meetings are very limited. A lot of them are virtual, like we're all used to now. We have a very few that are small groups, still less than 10. And again, we'll continue to do that until we feel that it's safe for our employees to come out of that mode.
So just to elaborate more about this comment about putting the farms on hold, it seemed like you were just making the decision based on the result of the testing, right? What else did you do during that time that you were waiting to know the results? Are there any other recommendations made to the employees, or any other things going on there?
Yeah. So we have the employees, we notify them that somebody is being tested, and that while they are being tested, as long as they are healthy, they're able to remain to come to work. If the employee that is the employee that is not being tested has any type of symptoms or is uncomfortable being at work, we allow them and encourage them to stay home. And if they would like to get tested, we encourage them to go get tested as well. Some of the testing facilities in some of our areas now are getting us test results back in 24 hours. And that has been fantastic. Mm-hmm. And to the point where if I can have the person drive there to get their test results, we'll do that. But upon, prior to that too, when we get notified, or when I get notified that there's an employee that's being tested, we immediately have that manager go through the cleaning protocols that we have set in place, and they have to clean and disinfect that, that entire office or that entire workspace of where that employee was at. And they'll do that routinely until they get those test results back.
No, very good. And it seemed like the principle you're applying there, just keep the virus out, or just don't let it in. And I can see how some of these may also help for other diseases, isn't it? I mean, are you applying some of the same criteria? I'm thinking about flu coming up in the season. Unfortunately, COVID is not affecting the animals, but I'm thinking too, because you're trying to do both things, right? Protect the health of the people, but also the health of the pigs. Are you thinking about extending some of these policies, in particular the people when going to the farms, if they are sick for something else, to still keep them at home and compensating them for that at least?
Yeah, so I don't know 100% what we've decided here, but the temping employees will probably stay, and continue to encourage people to stay home if they're sick or exhibiting symptoms. The other thing that I would say is that, ironically, I've probably been in about 8-9 sow farms in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and the offices are incredibly clean. So we're cleaning a lot more than before. That's for sure. So I hope to see some of those cleaning practices and just, overall, like, okay, yep, we're sick. Let's clean up. Let's take care of our workspace. Let's take care of each other. Hopefully some of those things just definitely become part of our new norm that doesn't have an end date on it.
No, very good. Nicole, thank you. We are at the top of the hour and we have to move on with the program. Thank you very much to you for presenting what you've done, and to the Pipestone system for sharing this information and these policies and these actions that had to come up, develop on the fly, and that now it seems like they are here to stay, but for the better, right? So thank you for that. So we will move to the end of this breakout session, and to do that, I have another speaker. And when we think about people, okay, and when we were asking about the surveys or talking to the different people about what should we cover at the Lehman Conference, people was always at the top, okay? And specifically on people was about recruiting, and retaining? How do you do a successful onboarding program when you have identified the people? So things that often we give for granted. Okay, but they are not, we shouldn't, because those seems to be one of the most difficult things we do in pig production. And to talk about some of these programs, we have invited with us Victor Martinez, who is the production improvement specialist at Schwartz Farms. Victor comes from Mexico City. He obtained his degrees as veterinarian and master's degree from the National Autonomous University of Mexico. He has more than 16 years of experience in swine production in both Mexico and the US, and he currently works at Schwartz Farms, and he's been certainly very busy developing these programs and have a lot of experience that he's going to share with us. Welcome, Victor. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And thank you for the invitation of being here, sharing experiences at this conference that I respect and admire so much. Well, let's start. So we have talked about the industry, and we know there's a tightly labor supply. And I have a question for all of you. So how many of you have been short-handed in a sow farm ever? We have now heard from Pipestone that they are 100% staff, and that's great. But that's hard to get and to maintain. I have an example in my experience. Then when I used to work in a P1 farm of a parity segregated system, we used to win 1 day a week, and in the Friday of the win day, it was me, the farm manager, and 1 breeding specialist, and we had to win 110 liters, ship the pigs, ship the P1s, and power wash, disinfect and load 2 rooms, in addition to all the rest of the farm tasks. So, well, sometimes saying that the labor supply is tight may be an understatement. And we have the industry that keeps evolving, but that we have more regulations. I don't know if that's how good is that, but we keep adding regulations, and we have audits, and our SOPs are improving, and there's more science. We have heard this morning that we transform the art to science. So that for sure requires skilled employees. We need employees that are able to change, employees that are adaptable, learners, dependable, reliable, and also we need the farms staff every day, including weekends and holidays. So that's another challenge we give or we have to keep our farms staffed. It is not new that we use foreign-born employees. There are many examples of success or using foreign-born employees that gives stability to operations. So in the Seek for Talent, we build great teams, and we want to keep adding great individuals. In consequence, those teams are usually diverse, different background, different academic levels, different culture, different nationality, and different languages. And of course, we want them to reach full productivity as soon as possible. So we want an onboarding program. So before we start the onboarding program, we need to ask ourselves, what do we expect from it? And there's a great list of goals or expectations that have been set to the onboarding programs. So when understanding the why, I just want to say that the why is not only how the pigs work, but also the implications of how when we perform our job may be impacting our goals for as farms or systems. For example, finding open sows at heat check versus at pregnancy diagnosis. Those days that we lost is going to cost something. So we need to give the right message to the employees in explaining the why. When they know why and how their daily routines impact the goal of the company, we can increase engagement and satisfaction. we can reduce the safety incidents. So onboarding is a great place to start building a safety culture. In this case, it's also useful to have a safety orientation with the safety coordinator of operation. That gives the opportunity to new employees to interact with the different areas of our operation. Many times we set the goal for onboarding to decrease turnover. We can say that engaged employees tend to stay longer with the companies. However, we can find some difference on turnover results of onboarding. And we're going to talk about this a bit later. We expect onboarding to increase productivity. We can expect that an employee well trained is going to execute better, and then our productivity may be impacted. So in this case, we need to review our execution. So if we set the onboarding to fix a problem of how do we execute, we need to make sure that we are actually executing what we want the new employees find after the training. So we need to make sure that that execution is what we expect. So there's a very important role of farm managers and supervisors because the trainer is going to be there, is going to be training the new employees just for some days or weeks, whenever the training program is, and then supervisor is the one. Is supervision is to keep update with job. Of course, we need to ask ourselves what if we have what we need. So facilities, the facilities are going to basically determine what kind of onboarding we are going to start with. And of course, about personnel, we need to find out if we have a trainer or we are going to hire a trainer, or what we are going to do about our trainer. So to me, the first step of onboarding is improving the hiring process. It actually is going to help reducing turnover. So basically, we need the right people in the box. And who is the one hiring? So many times, farm managers or HR is going to be hiring, and the level of interaction between them could be really good along the road to hiring an employee, or really poor to the extreme of having the farm manager calling HR saying, "Hey, I hired an employee yesterday, and it's starting today." So we need to fix that. A very good experience is to have a hiring committee with the onboarder trainer involved in it. In this case, 2 employees may be reviewing the application. I mean, 2 members of this committee, the HR and the onboarding, reviewing the application and actually choosing from them who is going to be interviewed for the first time, and then after the interview deciding who is going to go to a second interview. And in this experience, the second interview was performed by the onboarder, the farm manager, one farm manager, and the farm supervisor or complex manager, whenever you call it. And that interview was at the farm. So we expose the applicants to the process of biosecurity, entering the farm, getting dressed, and then show them the work in farm. And we usually send them the hardest part of the job. So scraping, power washing, processing. So this way we can see how they react, and they can actually see what they were looking for as job, and some of them would step out of the process after that interview, and some of them would stay. But this can help reduce turnover starting at the interview process. So we make sure that we hire the right person, and we need a welcoming strategy. This is key in onboarding. So first, make sure that they know how to get there. It sounds obvious, but it's important. And the best onboarder I have ever known used to spend more than half day before the first day of the new guys to show up, getting ready everything, name tags, absolutely in everywhere. Everywhere that the new employee would use would have the name, and so they know where to go and shower, what clothes are theirs, and where to find everything, and of course a place to put their belongings outside and inside the farm. So this gives a very good message that we have a spot for them in our team. And well, I'm gonna ask the question: is underwear important? Probably it's pretty obvious, but out of more than 15 or 20 years of showering in the farms, we may get used to digging a pile of used underwear that we assume is clean, and then go ahead and go to the farm. But that's not the best way to welcome a new employee. So yes, get them a new underwear. The crew is very important to introduce the new employee to everybody, and have the crew using name tags and encourage them to have a welcoming attitude and build an inclusive culture. So in this case, another question to us is: imagine that you're invited to a party and where you don't know anybody and nobody introduced you. So, and you're supposed to have fun. So it's important to get to know everybody. Some companies would send welcoming notes or welcoming presents. That's great. In this case, the only message would be to make sure that they are delivered correctly. I have seen T-shirts with the name tag of the new employee sitting in bench for days until the new employee would say, "Oh, I guess this is mine," and takes it. So it's important to deliver it properly. And of course, make sure showers are clean and organized. And the towels and every clothes. In my personal opinion, there is nothing less welcoming than a dirty shower and towels that make you wonder if they were washed with soap. So make sure we don't start losing our new employees in the shower rooms. Welcoming is really important even for those employees that are going to leave. So remember the settings of being short-handed on the farms. Sometimes employees face that environment of everybody's rushing, everybody's tired, everybody's really hurrying the job. So they decide not to come back. So the first impression we give them is the only impression they will ever have from the industry. So I think this is a big responsibility that we have to make sure that first impression is good. Okay, so we have the right employees and they know they have a spot in our team. So we need to onboard them. So, and I'm going to share 3 different ways of onboarding. I have lived or onboard. So the one-on-one. So this is probably the first way of onboarding, and probably we all have experienced this. So in this case, an experienced employee is chosen as a mentor to the new employee. In this case, it's valid to ask how the mentor is chosen. So basically the farm manager would choose the mentor based on what he thinks is the best employee. So sometimes he's the one best complying SOP, the more professional, the friendliest, or the fastest performing the processes. When we choose speed, we need to keep in mind that choosing the fastest employee as mentor for a new employee is a bit dangerous, because it can be frustrating for new employees because they are not going to be able to keep up with that guy. So be careful. Of course, we need to make sure that the right message reaches the new employee. So if we want the mentor to share the company values and the SOPs, we need to make sure that it is right. But sometimes we need to do this onboarding, and sometimes this kind of onboarding is perceived as not the best, but we can make it right. If we need to choose this, we're gonna need a mentor by department, breeding, Pharaoh, GDU, whatever. So you multiply your trainers or mentors, but probably the size of the operation is small, and this is the best way to do it, or you don't want to hire a trainer, or well, you can decide to that. But of course, you need to train the mentors to make it right. So you make sure they have a good information to share with the employees as company values. That's very important, and also giving a welcoming to all of the of the employees. And in this training program for them, we need to make sure that we don't end with as many messages as messenger we have. Then what I think is an excellent option is having a school farm. And I think it is especially useful when you have a lot of unexperienced applicants. So when you're going to have new employees that is the first time finding pigs or working with pigs or even seeing pigs. So this is a very good option for that in that case. In this case, we need to onboarding groups. So this is going to impact our hiring dates. So everybody needs to know that you're going to hire a group of employees in a specific date, and they are going to be busy being trained in the training farm for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever you choose as your program, and then no new hires are going to be hired until the new group is done training and sent to their home farms. So in this case, you definitively need an onboarding trainer that is going to provide a consistent training, and also is going to be a balanced training between classroom and hands-on training. So that's really good. So they are going to be talking about the procedures before they go and they perform them in the farm. In this case, the training is the one who is going to set the bar for procedures and is going to lead by example. So this is a really hands-on job. And the farm, when we choose the farm, we need to make sure that we have enough facilities. And I'm going to go back to the showers room. So, but in the case of the school farms, it's very important that we make sure that it doesn't become a bottleneck in the mornings out of receiving the normal crew of the farm and the training group. Also, laundry is important that it doesn't become a problem when having too much people in the farm with the training groups. The training space needs to be adequate. You need a projector, we need a computer, you probably need internet connection, we need a desk, and all you need for a real classroom to be set there. And of course, you need a space without interruption, so separate for the breaking room of the farm. And of course, you need plenty of activities for the training group to perform. So it is really important that you make sure that the hands-on part of the training is going to be dynamic. And so probably you want to choose your biggest farm. And also, you may think that you need your best farm, or if possible, the best performing, but for sure the farm you would like to set as example in your system. So this is hard to explain, but you may have in mind what is your best farm or how the ideal farm looks for you, and whatever is close to that in your system would be the best for your onboarding farm. And it's your best crews, your best crew. Probably you don't have it together, but you can build it. So you have to make sure that the crew is on board to the onboarding, and also they need to know that they are gonna be used as examples. So this is challenging for them because they need to be really excellent executing the procedures. But sometimes this is a motivation for them. Also, usually they like having more hands in the farm. Sometimes they perform less job because the onboarding group is doing the job. And that's an idea that needs to be talked about among the system, because some other farms would say that's unfair or whatever, but you need to be careful with that. When training is complete, you can have a graduation, probably think on a ceremony in farm, probably no big deal, but you need to make sure that they know that it is their first accomplishment in the company. So of course, you have two outputs. It could be a satisfactory completion or non-satisfactory. And in this case, this onboarding gives the opportunity for a post-selection process. So in this case, when the onboarding is satisfactory, you can say, well, this employee we've been working with him, we know him, we know his personality, so we can find a good fit in our system to send him to a specific farm where we think is going to perform better. And in case of non-satisfactory, we need to find out why and find opportunities of retrain. And at some points, we may decide if we have to let some employee go in this point. And this way, this option is a good opportunity to reduce turnover, probably not in our system, but in the farms that they are going to that are receiving the onboarding employees. So we give stability to the system by keeping the turnover in the school farm. Well, probably having a school farm is not an option. We probably don't have the ideal farm. We probably or if we have a system like the one in the map, that the employees on this farm is gonna take forever from them to get to the school farm if it is here. So you have a traveling onboarding. So this is a different type of onboarding. So the onboarding is going to be the onboarder specialist is going to be traveling. You need a lot of communication from farm managers, human resources, and the onboarder. So we want to make sure that we get there to onboard the new employees in the first day of employment. This, as the previous one, gives a very consistent training. And I would say that is improved because the one-on-one training settings that is going to happen, that is going to be different than the first option because you have a one person very specialized on training. The travel onboarding gives a new opportunity for the system of the onboarding and the onboarder. As the trainer will visit every farm and be involved in the daily routines while training, if we have hire the right person, this onboarding facilitates the detection of improvement opportunities that the onboarder will communicate to the crew and the managers and supervisors, and then start an improvement process. So, and this also is going to help you to retain your onboarder because this takes the onboarder position to more complete functions, and that could increase his or her engagement. Well, as of training, we need to make sure that we train them correctly, and we need the right material. And the right material is that one fits of our operations. We don't want to be clarifying difference of what is in the training material versus what we have as processes. So there are many options. We can pay to use systems that are out there, web-based or not, but probably we have hired a really skilled trainer and we have the opportunity to develop our own material. Every time we train, we should follow the tell, show, do, especially with unexperienced employees. So we review the process with them, then show them how to do it, and then do it with them. And always evaluate and give feedback. This is very important, timely feedback. There are different tools. I would say we need to keep that feedback and that evaluation as objective as we can. We can use checklists or rubrics. To me, the rubrics give the advantage of evaluating progress on an employee make over time in the same process. And probably they are less frustrating than a yes or no checklist. And of course, never stop training. Have a training program with a calendar. Continuous training, keep employees challenged and engaged. We were reminded on Sunday the danger for biosecurity of unengaged employees. So we need to continue training. And of course, we need to adapt in many ways. We have experienced distance learning versus in-person. It's more challenging, the distance training, but we need to keep adapting. And of course, we need to adapt to the industry changes. We have just seen this morning how adopting technology is a great advantage. So we need to adapt to that, and the training needs to be adapted to that. And also the animals change. The sow is not the same than they were 10 years ago. So it's not easy to me to measure how onboarding impacts our metrics, as we usually are doing different things to improve, more than one thing. But some numbers that we have had in Schwartz farms in the last 2 years, as of employee retention, we have 82%. So we have a turnover of 18. Some systems are really stable, some systems are not. And I'm showing here the safety incidents is 9% of onboarded employees in the last 2 years. I would like it to be 0, so this is a pretty disappointment, but we need to keep measuring and keep training. But at least these were minor reports and no days out of work were required. Well, we talk about international workforce. We know we need to recruit, the visa requirement. In the visa, I would say that we need to keep in mind, but most of the visas require the college graduates. So it's important when we recruit them, we need to take the most out of them, of course. So every employee is for productivity. Recruiting, you can choose to have your own team or use a hiring company, recruiting company. We need to think if we need to help them in relocation, but of course we need to find them a place to live. I have tried to find a home to live while being in Mexico, and I couldn't. So we need help in that. In the community, well, it's basically everything. The government offices, but we need to take them to get the social security number and to take them to the driving test and lend them a car to take the driving test. That's sounds something really obvious if you already live here, but it's not as easy when we come. And the weather may sound like a joke, but some of us are not used to the kind of weather that can kill us. So I many times I still ask the difference between a warning and a watch talking about weather. So I just explain them the particularities of your location. So onboarding international employees. This picture shows the team of our 2 best farms in Schwartz farms for the last year. In this picture, you are looking at 5 countries and 2 continents. So when it's really important, we need a support network, especially in the first day. We need to help them get into the farm. I mean, when I first came to the US, I didn't have anything, security number, license, nothing. So I couldn't drive. I wasn't able. I mean, I could drive, but that would be risky. So we need to that support network for the very basic stuff. In the case of benefits, we were talking in the last talk about how to explain, and we need to explain our current employees how to better use the benefits. But in the case of international employees, we need to make sure that they know how they work, the benefits work here, because many times it's different than in our home countries. To me, the best way to onboard international employees is group training. These help them build support inside and outside the farm, so they are not the only one new. That's really good, and they interact really good, especially if you have a group of international employees coming, and you can also mix that group with local applicants. That's great. So yeah, you need a bilingual person there to train, but I wouldn't recommend you to separate your training. That helps building your inclusive culture, and also helps them to faster integrate to the company and to the community. And of course, group training helps team building. They are going to be training and working together during the training program. And then when you send them to the farms, they are going to be already a team. So even though they are going to be separated, they may be networking and helping each other improve. feedback. For some reason, I have found that feedback, and myself, we need more feedback for some reason. So when I go and onboard international employees, they keep asking how they are doing. So make sure that you give proper feedback and timely. There's a lot of things to say about the language barrier. So the only question I'm going to drop here is if it is possible to have successful teams not speaking each other's language. Okay, so who is going to do this? So the onboarder. You need an individual who is experienced in the pig industry, knowing the pigs, knowing the systems, and knowing your system. Or if you hire somebody from outside your system, give time for that individual to know your system deeply. Skills, of course, you need communication. You need to decide if you need a bilingual and what languages you need, interpersonal skills, and of course, you need somebody who wants to learn constantly. I truly think that the best we can learn, the best we can teach or train. Of course, somebody knowing the pigs and caring them, knowing what they need, that's able to transmit that. And if you ask me what's the best important characteristic of this individual, I would say willing to help others to succeed. So at the end, that's our work. We help them improve, and this way we help our companies improve.
So Victor, sorry to interrupt you. We have to wrap up. We're at the end of the hour. And you've done an excellent job to tell us in very good detail all the programs, all the details. Any final thoughts before? But we just have to wrap up.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. This is actually the last slide. And so we build our teams one employee at a time. We just want to make sure that they know what we are and how we do what we say what we do.
Very impressive, Victor. Thank you again. There were a couple of questions in the chat session. Please go ahead and review those. And then for the rest, please, thank you for joining us. And please join us again now at the session starting at 12:30. Where do we go from here? That's the last hallway conversation that you want to have for the day. Thank you.